Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic Reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rotten about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It means something. It means something. You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic Reversal!
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact that we are all up in your face this time once again for the one, the only, Protonic Reversal. Welcome to it. Episode 398 of this show. And in just a few moments, I'm going to be talking to one of my favorite guitar players, one of my favorite musicians from one of my favorite bands. Returning guest Duane Denison, Jesus Lizard Tomahawk, Denison Kimball Trio, so much more. But before I do any of that, welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I'm your host, Conan Neutron. I'm a rock and roll lifer that has been touring and recording for 24 years, most known for the band Conan Neutron, The Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and I use the format of this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect, but may or may not be household names. This is episode 398. Now, if this is your first time listening to the show, archives are available for free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding, at protonicreversal.com. However, if you want to support the show and get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal will achieve that goal. If you like the show, or even just a single episode, please feel free to like, subscribe on your platform of choice, share it around the internet, and even leave a review. All of that helps people discover the show. It beats back the almighty algorithmic overlords, and it's just a darn nice thing to do. So, 2024. Did not have New Jesus Lizard record in my bingo card, but here we are, and it's fantastic. We're going to be talking about Rack with none other than Mr. Duane Denison, who I'm going to bring on right now. Duane, thanks for coming back, man. Appreciate having you.
Thanks for having me.
What a treat this record is. The fact that you guys are doing anything at all is lovely, but for me, new music always takes it out of the reenactment space, and it's a vitality of being a band.
Sure.
And I think this slots so nicely with the best amongst your catalog. I think it rips, and it sounds effortless. I know there's a lot of effort that does go into it, though. Can you tell me the story of how Rack came to be?
Well, we had been talking about doing new material for a while. I mean, we started doing the reunion shows around 2009. And so the possibility was there, but certain people were kind of dragging their feet more than others. So a couple years back, this was driven mostly by myself and David Sims. We just decided, you know what, we've got some sketches and material and stuff. Let's just start working on it. And when the train starts leaving the station, people will get on board and we'll make it happen from there. So for me, it was because we still seem to enjoy playing together and getting out and playing shows, and audiences were happy to see us. For me, as much as anything, this was driven by wanting to have some new material to play live. Right? As much as anything. I mean, I like the old songs, but I've played them thousands of times, literally in some cases.
Yeah, and you could probably be composing a sonnet in your head while playing Monkey Trick or something. You've played it so many times. I'm sure.
I mean, some of them have little difficult bits that you really have to concentrate on, but others don't. But as much as anything, it was because we wanted to have new stuff to play, and it just seemed. Finally, we got everybody on board and started doing it, and things just fell into place, and away we go.
I love that. So first of all, this is the first time that you guys have been in studio together for a number of years, and it's not that everybody's been idle, obviously, but you've been very busy. I really love that last Tomahawk record.
Thank you.
I think that's somehow an underrated band. I don't really understand how, but
yeah,
different conversation.
It got pegged as a super group.
Yeah.
From the start, and so no one took it seriously, or a lot of people, indie people, never even bothered. And so anyway, that is a whole other thing.
It is, and I feel like and I do want to speak about that because I think that it deserves it. But it is funny that I feel like if people were just engaged without knowing who the players were, they're like, oh, this new band's great, and they would possibly engage with it differently, and that's a different story. But I am interested in everyone in the band has made many records, and you guys have made a bunch of records that I would consider timeless as well, but it's a long time between making them. So does everything kind of snap back into place, maybe good or bad, when you're recording, or is it coming at it from a different place as musicians and people, but also the same?
No, well, for me, it's a little different because I think I was the most musically active over the past 25 years, between the different groups I played with. And it kind of others not as much. But once again, by the time we actually went in the studio to make the album proper, we had demoed things. We had, just like in the old days we would go in, and in this case, we didn't go to when we were demoing, we didn't go in studios. We did this thing where we would rent a big practice space, like a big fancy SIR type place. And the guy who recorded, Paul Allen, brought a mobile recording unit in.
Right.
And we just played live in the practice space, and we had really good sounding demos right from the start. So by the time we got in the studio, we knew what we were doing. We what I mean? Like, we had played those songs lots of times. We knew we had the arrangements together. There's always going to be little things that are sort of spontaneous things, usually guitar overdubs, vocal overdubs, that kind of thing. But no, it seemed like we did it just like we always did. We would play live in the studio, sometimes with the vocals going as well, sometimes not. But live, usually within visual, sight lines of each other, maybe with the amps separated from, the drum room. And we would go in, and when you're playing live like that, you're shooting for drum takes, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
You get the killer drum take, and then you can build on the track from there. And Mac was very ready for this. And man, we didn't have to play anything more than 2-3 times. So he was done, I think, within like 3 days. And then we could concentrate on everything else. And so we tracked everything, including guitar overdubs, I think in 2 weeks. So we were ready, and we were working. We've kind of always been, well, when you're in the indie world, that time is money, and you have an eye on the clock, and you understand how it works. The more time you spend, the more money it costs, the less likely or the longer it will take for things to recoup, etc. So we never lost that. We never, I don't understand bands when I hear them, oh, we wrote the album in the studio. Mm-hmm. Like, really? You're spending $1,000, $2,000 a day, and you're just hemming and hawing over ideas? Like, really? Right. That's such a luxury. I can't imagine that.
They have practice spaces, and you can just
that's why they have them.
You can rent those. That's a lot cheaper.
I get if you're doing improvised music, or if you're avant-garde, an improv thing. That's a different thing. Or maybe if you want to have a more spontaneous things here and there to mix in with your cuts. But for the most part, man, you got to have that stuff ready to go when you're in the studio proper.
Right. Instead of writing songs on the fly and such. Yeah.
I don't see how they do that.
It seems to work for a very select few, and then a bunch of people seem to think it works as well. And
they think it does.
Less said about that, the better. So there's not a lot of tone chasing as far as sounds then, or you mix and match. Because I know that there's a lot of, you're a guitarist that people attempt to emulate all the time. And, that's both an honor and possibly an annoyance sometimes. I don't know. But You've got a thing that you do that always kind of sounds like you. Like it's sort of, I've seen you guys played like on what I assume are like rented Marshalls or
Sure.
something along those, and it sounds like the Jesus Lizard. It's got that sound, but then there's always the allure in the studio of like, oh well, what can we can try this. We can get this different sound. We can do this overdub can be with this guitar and this amp combination, so on and so on, which is great to a point. But then of course, that way lies either madness or Steely Dan down the line, right?
Yeah, so you can get into trouble doing that. Usually, well, the studio we were in, this Audio Eagle is the home studio of Patrick Carney of the Black Keys.
Black Keys, sure, yeah.
Yeah, and so by the time it was built by and for a drummer. So the drum world was way happening. And then he had amplifiers and things that were just eye-popping, where, and awesome cables and the mic collection. So getting good sounds was not an issue at all, ever. There was a little bit of work, just I think maybe some of the software stuff wasn't quite working the first day or so, but we got past, whatever. And we're not really relying on that stuff so much. But no, I kind of feel like for us and for me, for when I play in the Jesus Lizard, there's a certain sound that I'm going to go for and use most of the time, because that's what works for those songs. And those songs were written with that sound in mind. And so I've never liked it when you go in the studio and maybe it's some guy you haven't worked with before. That's only happened maybe once or twice with us, where they would try, like, oh, let's go shopping the day before the session and let's go buy a bunch of effects and all that. No, let's not. Let's not. I don't want to sit there and try every gimmicky box there is available now. And now there are a couple things on this out here and there that I've never recorded before. There's definitely some fresh sounds on there. I'm not opposed to it, but I kind of feel like, what we do, there's a certain sound that works with that, and I'm not going to change it just because
it's great. Why would you?
Yeah, and you just refine it. You just do different variations of it over time.
Yeah.
And I can get that, like you said, I can get that kind of sound, whether it's a Marshall or a high watt or certain types of Fender or whatever, or Victory.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and I think that's a good professional musician can, especially guitar players.
Mm-hmm.
I'm told that Jeff Beck, that was his test for guitar players who sometimes played with him, is that he would put them in front of his different amps and say, here, dial in your sound.
Right.
That was like a thing, find your sound on all these different pieces of gear. So without getting too gearheady, I know what I like. I know what my bandmates like. And if we all like it, then we figure the fans will like it. So,
Well, I think the sound of this record slots so nicely in with the other records. It sounds like you can, and I put it into my iTunes library and I can listen to everything, and it doesn't sound like it's not jarringly different or anything along those lines. It isn't like, oh, this is auto-tune was big this year.
Right.
none of those times of sonic hallmarks that immediately date a record. I'm not familiar. So Paul Allen, I'm not. Everyone thought it was the other Paul Allen, by the way, which I think is hilarious for a while. It's like, well, I don't think that would.
Is that the Apple or Microsoft guy?
Yeah, it's like I don't think it's that guy, man.
No, and he did this Paul used to be known as Paul TFO Allen, 10-Finger Orchestra Allen, from his guitar playing days.
Oh, okay, cool.
And he was a session player as well as playing around town.
Nice, yeah.
That's when I met him. I don't know, 20 years ago. And he did the last Tomahawk album as well. So I had worked with him in the past.
There's something to be said for working with someone and knowing how they operate.
And he was working with us right from the start. It was his mobile recording unit working on the demos. So he's been involved with us and these songs for the duration, and before we were even tracking. He already had his head around what was happening before we went to the studio for keeps. He's played with all sorts of different people, everyone from the Beach Boys to Keb Mo to just a jack of all trades. But like a lot of producers, especially I've noticed here in Nashville, they start off as sidemen, either guitar players or bass players, usually guitar players and bass players. And maybe they get tired of touring or get tired of other people telling them what to do. And or just by default, they become the guy who sets up the mics and gets the levels and runs the machinery. And I think that's kind of what's happening with him. And so, yeah, he's not a household name yet, but we'll see.
Well, and yeah, I mean, also that's how John Paul Jones got recording stuff. It was like
Paul Leary. There's a guy here in Nashville. He's a country guy, but he's a rock guitar player from Cleveland. Jay Joyce.
Yeah.
There's others. Pete Anderson, who was Dwight Yoakam's guitar player. There's so many. Once in a while, you'll get an outlier, Butch Vig, a drummer.
Yeah.
That almost never happens.
That's pretty rare, yeah.
And you never see the singer become you never see that. It's not going to happen.
More likely to become an actor, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
they want to be drummers, and drummers want to be singers.
And guitarists want to be like arrangers and orchestrators,
Singers.
right? Yeah.
Or singers. And bass players just want to be human.
No, but I love the idea that you have. Paul is like with the journey, the progression of the journey from like embryos of ideas and as arrangements come together and things tighten up and become fully formed. He's along for the entire process. I think that's kind of interesting, and I think that's kind of, there's going to be a familiarity with the music that maybe you wouldn't have. It was just like, oh, this is the new guy. We're going to go to the new guy's place, and he's got a good studio, and here we go.
No. And everybody was comfortable, and we've been using Nashville as kind of a new home base for years now. Since we started playing back together, everybody stays at my house. We use my practice space for small things. For bigger things, we rent space, and then Paul's been around. Yeah. So it just kind of was a nice, comfortable fit.
And you have a situation, you have a situation. I mean, in Music City, right? Like Nashville's very, very friendly for music, and to a certain degree, and you can have a lot of resources available to you because of that.
Absolutely, yes.
It seems like that's a really good call. I was thinking about everything that has happened since the last Jesus Lizard record, and I had David on Yao on the show sometime back for the anniversary of Goat, and we talked about that record a bit. I know he kind of like fundamentally like changed his like more or less learned how to sing correctly like for a couple years as well, and kind of came at it with a, not that he was lacking before, but like a renewed vigor to do that part of it well for a number of years, but then also like still do the thing that is distinctly David Yao and that no one often emulated again, but never
right. I'm sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Oh yeah. So he advanced a lot like as a singer in that way. So
I think so too. I think it's one of his best things. With David, he's not a great singer, but he is a great vocal stylist, and I think an underrated lyricist as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
Great.
And with David, there's going to be songs or parts of songs where it's going in and out of tune and in and out of time, but that's part of the thing, and that's part of the phrasing and the style, and it works with the music, because the music tends to be driving and very ordered and very I don't want to say rigid, but it's arranged and tight and solid, so that if the vocals were like that too, it would sound oppressive to me. But it's almost like he adds this sort of free element, almost like a sax on top of it or something.
Sure.
Right. That kind of sets the whole thing off in a way. So as long as he's not, there's a little bit of coaching involved too. Like sometimes he'll do a phrase and like, dude, you're starting on the wrong note. I know I can hear what you're doing, dude, but start not that one. Get on the piano, ding, ding, ding. Start here.
Yeah, yeah.
Start here. And sometimes he needs a little of that, but I guess we all do sometimes. But yeah, and I think it's one of the best things he's done. Some of it,
I agree.
Some of the vocals, some of the things, it reminded me of stuff he did on the Scratch Acid album.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can hear that. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think you're right. I think when there is a rigidity to, when the music drives in that certain way, and then the singer's also doing the same thing, and like it's almost tiring somehow to my sensibilities.
It lacks humanity.
Yeah, exactly.
And it seems artificial. Even if it's not, it seems artificial.
Right.
And the same with the sound of the instruments. Like with a vocalist like David Yao, well, especially with the guitar, if it was processed and with all the latest digital and whatever, it would sound ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I'm not anti-effects. I used effects all throughout this album. I've used stuff I never did before on a couple things. And there's little bits. There's even some modeling stuff in there I used some really top-notch amps and stuff, but I also did some modeling, and you can't tell. Yeah. And I defy you to point out where it is, because you won't be able to.
Which is blasphemy for a certain type of player. But again, it's a tool in the toolbox, right? So
I look at it like, just today I was looking at some rock photos somewhere, and I saw a picture of Elvis's guitarist, Scotty Moore, who's one of my favorites.
Oh, yeah.
And there was an amp. He had an amplifier that was custom made for him by a guy, I think Ray Butts, who later worked for Gretsch. Mm-hmm. And it was the only amp in the world that had a built-in tape echo, so he could get his slapback right from the amp itself. So if Scotty Moore in the 50s is using state-of-the-art equipment, that's what guitar players want to do. Yeah. I'm not anti whatever. I have tube, and I have analog stuff. I have digital stuff. I have cheap. I have expensive. Whatever sounds good is good.
Right. It's not as if the technology to make music and implement it in new and creative ways stopped at any given moment in time. It's just that a lot of times people will think of the worst application of something and think of that as endemic of the entire thing. Right. It's just not true. And it's like anything can be utilized in a cool and inventive way. Or even something that's like, wouldn't have thought. Look, I wouldn't say I'm a huge Cher fan, but that like song with the auto tune, right? It was like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's interesting. And then the first time I heard it, and then I was like, oh, now everything's going to be that now, huh? Okay, that's
right.
Woof, not great. But the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I haven't heard that before.
I laughed out loud. It made me laugh out loud, but that's okay too. It's pop music.
Yeah, exactly. It's meant to be
entertained.
It's something to hear at the grocery store.
Yeah, I'm not going to ponder it on my deathbed.
When Cher did that Believe song,
it really meant something to me.
Exactly. But I think that there's something to be said for like continuing to push, right? Like using new tools and finding out if this is not for me or this is for me.
Yeah.
And people, I feel like, get very. They get ideas about what is or isn't. Like, I'm in some of these. I personally have an electrical guitar company custom guitar, right? I love it. It's great. Best thing I ever owned. I have other guitars, which I also play, and that's okay. But they'd be like, oh, Duane stopped using the. It was like, oh my God, really? Like,
right.
As far as tiresome guitar discourse, of which there was a lot, there was definitely like a day or two that there was like panic amongst the nerds.
I know. It's more with guitar stuff, and now that the internet, now you have these chat groups dedicated fetishizing equipment, and it goes on to other things too, amplifiers too.
Right. Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's like, okay, I used to use high watts almost exclusively. I gradually started using other things. If you see us now, maybe I'm renting a Marshall. I have Black Star stuff that sounds great.
Yeah.
I have. I've got a Victory, I've got Fender, whatever works, whatever it, and it still sounds like us. It still sounds like me. It still sounds like, you know what I mean? This fetishization of gear is like a new thing. Well, maybe it's not so new, but it's done by people, these gatekeepers who aren't even in bands. These people are going on about This one was made at this year, and the serial number is from this period. And not one of them do you ever hear them say, well, my band members think this one sounds better. They never say that.
Right.
Or they said, well, I was playing this festival the other weekend and I used the cheap one and everybody seemed to like it better.
Yeah.
They never say that. That's usually, well, I was playing in my basement and my mom told me to turn it down.
Exactly. Turn down that racket. Yeah. No, and that's, I think that's a difference between, working musician and, I don't mean to denigrate it by using the term, but a hobbyist, right? There's nothing wrong with having like music as a hobby. Music is a lovely hobby. For some of us, it's more than that. And everybody gets to have an opinion. Everything's at the same volume now, and that's lovely, but they're tools. You know, like I'm sure if you go to some forum, there's someone that, well, this type of hammer is really the only one that you can use for, oh my God, fine, sure. Like it's
yeah, and it goes on and on beyond that. It goes to I don't want to publicize things. I just eventually had to step away. Like people discussing how certain sounds were made in the studio, recording 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And like, dude, you weren't there.
Yeah.
You weren't even born yet. Don't try to pull out your professional credentials with me. You weren't at the session. You have no idea what happened. And you're trying to explain it. What's happening why this sound is the way it is. Like, dude, you don't know. Just stop.
It's it's like a parasocial recording relationship, right? It's like, you know who would know? The people that were in that room. That's who would know. And but people love having ideas and they love having opinions as well. No, but I think that it's, and I know it's harping on tone and gear, which is not really the beat of this podcast, but I think that it's cool that you can have something that sounds fresh and sounds new. Like there is progression to this record, but have it just slot in so nicely with everything else. Like that's something that, I mean, look, even the Ramones, like wildly changed it up sometimes. Sometimes it was like, what did this producer hear the Ramones before making this record? Did they know what this band does? Like, this doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, with this, one of the things about Rack, right from the start, some of the stuff, we generally agreed that it should reference the past, at least as a point of departure. Yeah. It should. Some of the material was a couple of rough ideas were from the 90s that never got used.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And it was literally a point of departure.
Yeah.
But everything else has been written since then and arranged in the last few years. So we thought it would be a mistake. I particularly thought it would be an absolute mistake to not reference the past, but it would also be maybe a bigger mistake to stay there. So some of this sounds like it could have been from the 90s.
Yeah.
As far as stylistically and sonically, but others don't. Others, it's definitely, this is a modern rock band doing its thing. And then there's a couple little twists in there, like What If, where David Yau's doing a spoken word for the first time.
That's right, yeah.
Clean guitars, and then this extreme break in the middle, and then it's relatively clean and quiet. There's little semi-acoustic things here and there. So yeah, but
I think you guys nailed it on that too, because it is, you want to push and to move things forward, but you also want to give the people what they paid for too. By the same token, you have a record of success with this band. People like it for certain reasons. If it was all ballads, then maybe people would be mad. Who knows?
Yeah, and if you put out this is our first record, and I don't know what, 20 something years. Yeah. You don't come out sounding completely different. If it was all electronic or whatever, that would be insane, and it would be it would almost be insulting to fans. It's like they're pre-ordering and getting excited about something based on your pre-existing body of work, and so to now pull the rug out and do something, totally alien would be kind of perverse. Right? It would.
Who are you, The Fall? Yeah.
Yeah, and if we put out a string of albums and every single one was different, that would be a statement. Yeah. But I don't think that's going to happen here, and that's not what's happening. And I think that a certain amount of change over time. We're different people now, obviously, but at the same time, what we like about rock is the same: the energy, the excitement, all of it. The sex, the violence, the drugs, the alcohol, the smile, all of that. It's all still there, maybe in controlled amounts.
Right, exactly. It's more like concentrate, just add water. Yeah.
Adult portions, but
Exactly.
but I think that to me, if you try to, you can become contrived.
Yeah.
Both ways. Like, I feel like sometimes I felt like the Ramones and AC/DC and Motorhead, maybe they pegged themselves too much and they stuck to their thing a little. They could have stepped out a little more.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you're like, we're joking, like if you try to do something so extreme and different, well, that's just as contrived.
Yeah,
that's phony.
That's just pushing the other way, right?
Yeah, that's just being to me pretentious and trying to make some statement that's not really there.
Yeah.
No, we're still the Jesus Lizard, and this sounds like us now.
Right.
This is what we sound like now, and as if we had never stopped making records.
It's a continuation as much as anything else. Yeah. And we talked about this in the past, but I mean, I think that it's interesting that there's a new music listening audience that discovers like GOAT every year. Right, that every year they hear it for the new time, and because it sounds more or less like a band in the room, right? Like it doesn't sound dated. It doesn't have these like sonic hallmarks that you can immediately say, oh, that is a record from this year, this month, maybe this studio. It sounds like a good band, a tight band playing in a room, and again, there's something to be said for that. I've talked about that at length. Not just on that record, but that style, with the Steve Albini, which, again, last time I talked to you, which wasn't even that long ago, he was still with us. That was like one of the last.
All right.
His segment was one of the last interviews he did, I think, for the 10-year episode, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
And
we were aware of that. We were aware of his legacy. And Paul, the producer, Paul Allen, was aware of that too.
Right.
But at the same time, there were things about some of those records he did that we weren't all necessarily 100% happy with. I felt there could have been improvements there as well. And Paul was aware of that and, took time to speak to each of us about what we wanted to hear and what we were going for with our sounds on this. And so he was aware of that, but not trying to emulate it, put it that way.
And those are big shoes, because no matter what, even though you obviously made other records, right, and not all of them with Steve Albini, but like it's something where he's tied to the band's legacy in a lot of ways, and not a bad way in any way, shape, or form, of course. But anyone jumping on the console is immediately going to be like, how does it stack up against these other records? Right. Yeah. That's the problem with having wildly popular, interesting, influential records, is that people will compare whatever records you do to them. It's a good problem to have.
Yes, sure.
But I think that there's people that, like the vocal level, right? Like getting the vocal level in the songs. Like, where does the vocal sit? I feel like a lot of times it's almost when you have to like kind of fight to hear it a little bit, when it's in like so like above everything else, floating over all of the music, then for a certain type of listener, it can make you listen a little harder to it and listen and kind of be like, oh, what's that? Oh, that's interesting. And like kind of discover more as it goes on. But there's people that do not feel that way and do not mix their records like that, where it's like, well, why even bother having a band at all if all you're going to, it sounds like karaoke or something.
Well, Steve, he was never shy about telling us and telling everyone really that his least favorite thing was vocals.
Right.
All right. That was his least favorite thing. He, as far as levels and just the amount of time he would spend on getting good takes, it could be exasperating sometimes.
Yeah.
And I felt like those songs could have been a little better if let's spend a little more time, do another couple takes. Don't just splice that one. Come on.
Yeah.
And so, well, one of the reasons as you think David's vocal performance on this album is noticeably good. Well, because there was that. We were spending time and focusing on it in a way that wasn't always happening in the past. Another thing that Steve could sometimes be kind of light on the bass guitar.
Yeah.
On things, and it's not now. I think you can hear everything that's on this album. You can hear everything well, and things kind of the peaks and prominent points come and go between the different things.
Mm-hmm. No, and not in a tiring way, like for the listener. Like it's definitely something where that can be. You can tell sometimes when stuff is mixed by committee. You're like, why is the bell of the ride so high on this song?
Right,
it's like,
sure.
It's absurd. It's like, oh well, I just got tired of fighting with so and so about it, and like they turned it up. Oh, okay, great. But but it seems like everybody's on the same page, in a lot of ways. And I feel like when you talk about, bands where obviously we're all getting older, but when it's like a band comes in and does another record, and they're just saying, oh, is it going to be like a more mellow and tame affair? Not at all. This is like, I feel like if you like the band, you will like this record. Like it's the thing you hope it to be. And it's
I'd like to think so, and it seems like so far, just based on the singles, on the response to the singles and the videos, people are going, "Whoa, yeah, sounds like them." So far so good.
Yes,
and I feel like the album there's more depth than what you, as is the case, than what you get from just singles.
Well, absolutely, yeah. And as someone that when I listen to stuff, I listen to albums in their entirety. That's just, I'm not a playlist guy, which I understand.
Right.
Like people love playlisting stuff. Peace and love to the playlisters. I'm more of an album guy, and that's okay. It's okay to do both. But I think, like I said, it does it sits all very nicely. I mean, you even have like the artwork. Right, like it's the artist. You've worked with that artist before.
He did Goat and Liar and Brown, and he was another Texas artist. Yeah,
and he has such a unique style, and it's somehow recognizable without being repeating, if that makes sense. Right, there's an ineffability to it, to like what he does.
Yeah, you've got this sort of old timey, almost antique. Some of it was like Renaissance, some of it 19th century sort of look.
Right.
But it's off. It's got a surrealist sort of twist to it. And we're just thrilled, Malcolm Bucknell, that he just was like, sure, go ahead, do another one.
Yeah.
Have at it.
That's awesome. So is that like how, because that's been like a years long relationship at this point. I mean, how did he come to be like the guy for that?
I think that David Yao and David Sims either knew him or I think David Sims knew one of his kids and went to school with them and was literally at their house one day and saw these paintings and was like, and the guy was like, yeah, my dad does that or something I think there's something like that.
Awesome.
And so that's where it came from. We've got this weird Texas art connection. Also, we've got a fourth single that's going to be out, I think around the time of the album, and we've got a video that's going to make your eyes pop out by Bill Barminski. And Bill Barminski, I met almost 40 years ago in the the Austin punk rock scene, and he was doing zines and comics and stuff. Well, now he's a lecturer at UCLA, and he does weird art. He does a collaboration with Banksy recently, and he did an animated video for us. I was thrilled that he would do it.
That's so cool.
So we've got one more coming. So there, all our Texas art people came through for us in a big way.
I love that, and that's it's an expression of community as well. When there's an intermingling of the art, the audio art, and the visual art, and everything. Like,
well, that's to me that's one of the things that to me set the underground and the punk rock scene apart.
Yeah.
From pretty much certainly the other types of rock, and most other types of popular music, in that there was a built-in subculture there, especially starting in the 70s, 80s, where it wasn't just music. It was zines, it was art, it was gallery and installation world. It was a look, a style. It was films, underground films, whether it was the beginnings of the Jim Jarmusch and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And all these different things contributed to this vibe, and it was intoxicating. It was exciting and intoxicating, and it's been sort of diluted, and then it got popularized. Then it turned into something else in the 90s. It just seemed like it
certainly did, yes.
The humble beginnings just went away.
Yeah.
And then it turned into this big overblown thing, and then it kind of stopped, and then it kind of went away. I think it seems like when hip hop and and Britpop and these other things came along, and then everything kind of went back down. And now it's come back up. And I feel like now it's coming back up because the kids, because people like us, like me, have kids who are in their teens and early 20s who have rediscovered this world and are excited and thrilled by it. And now they've got it through the internet and they're sort of spreading it around again. And it's going viral. And now the subculture thing is back. And I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, and I think you're hitting on something really important here, and it's something that it's easy to take the most cynical take on, content, and whatever it is that these walled gardens and the new gatekeepers are attempting to push down the throats of everybody for whatever their end purposes, usually monetization, are. But I think that you're not ever going to be able to stop a passion for art and community, and for stuff that's real, right? I mean, like, I think that there's. Like, I could pull out the P.T. Barnum quote if you want, but I feel like you can't fool everybody all the time, like, and it's to me, like, hearing something like Rag, and it's like being in the desert and you crawling for days and somebody hands you like a nice cool glass of water. It's like, oh, lovely, thank you. I needed that. I was literally dying, there's something to be said for having those, for folks such as yourself, like taking that chance to put more art into the world and to be this thoughtful about it. Like the fact that you guys thought about it this much and kind of get like what makes the band good and why people connect with it and why it's important to people and how, like, whether it's a motivating factor or not, it would be a betrayal. It would feel like a betrayal to people if it was terrible or if there was like some ill-conceived.
Oh, absolutely.
Falseness,
right from the very get-go, we knew the quality control had to be high. We had to be brutal. There had to be zero tolerance for half-ass, mediocre, whatever. We couldn't do it. And I'm not saying that every single moment is brilliant, but we kind of went over it pretty hard, and I think this might be my favorite Jesus Lizard album, period.
I can hear that. Yeah, no,
I feel like this has the most. With every album, you're always going to have songs you like better than others, and this one has, I think, a higher percentage of songs I really like than the others. And obviously, I'm not the same person I was 30 years ago. My life is different. The world is different.
Yes.
But I still get excited. There's a reason why we still do this, because we still like this kind of thing. We still get excited when a good band comes along and makes a great record where everything works together. The music, the lyrics, the artwork, the videos, the presentation, the live show, when everything fits together in a way, then to me it's like, yes, thank you guys. You guys thought about it. You were deliberate. You were focused and deliberate, and you made it happen. It wasn't just stupid, haphazard, dumbass clown show. This was like, no, there's some of that too. But
the appropriate amount, sure.
Literally, the word concert, to work in a concerted way to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times bands, especially bands they've been around and they put albums out every single year because they feel the need that, I have to have an album every year in order to go on tour every year. They lose the sight that it has to be special, that it has to be more of an event, and you have to, if you want it to have cultural impact, you have to take time and be fairly meticulous about these things. And when you're just treating it like product to be bought and sold as a commodity, you lose that. And maybe because we hadn't done anything in a while, we were able to really super focus on it.
So that's, yes. So first of all, lovely sentiment. I will like and subscribe to your newsletter. I'm on board with it. So you leave stuff on the cutting room floor though. Are there songs that when they were developing that you were like, what, this isn't good enough, or this isn't the correct use of this, or like it isn't working?
There may or may be a few things in the pipeline.
Got it. Okay. All right.
May or may not be. No, along the way, there were things that got shelved that we just stopped demoing. Right. There comes a point, right? You know, when you're working with people, you're working on a song, there comes a point where you just kind of go, does anyone really like this?
Yeah, what are we doing?
Why are we still working on this? Yeah. Like, I mean, if we keep working it over, we might come up with something, but there comes a point where if you're overworking it, it shouldn't take that much work. It should jump up and come to life pretty quickly, or else you're going to beat it to death. You'll beat the life out of it. And by the time it turns into something, you don't like it anymore.
Right. You've made a skillfully crafted, boring song.
Yeah.
You know, and I find that so interesting to hear you say, because I think it requires a certain degree of self-awareness that, of course, is going to, you know, it'll feel good while you're playing it. Oh, I have this cool riff, or, oh, that transition is awesome. I love when the drums come in. Yeah. Cool. But does it work as a song or not? Well, kind of, or yes, it rules. Yeah. You know,
but sometimes that's where doing demos comes in handy, because it gives you time to live with it.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it gives you time. And that's something else you can't do. You go in that studio, oh, we're going to write it in the studio. Well, you've spent $50,000 and you better, I guess you're going to have to put it out, right? Well,
right. Sunk costs. We've sunk too much money into it. We have to put it out now.
We have to put it out now. That's where crap comes from. So if you do demos, that buys you time. You can listen to it and live with it and see how, and then step away from it, come back to it. Does it still get you off? If it doesn't, then you need to leave it behind. You should
reconsider, and you need to be kind of fearless that way too, right? I mean, like
also too, as you start to accumulate songs, they start to fit together in a way. You start the album.
Yes.
Usually the beginning is the hardest part, the blank page, the empty page, because you don't have anything to compare anything else to. You've just got these rough ideas. But then as you start, okay, here's our first batch, maybe 4 or 5. You set that aside, work on the next batch. You get a couple batches going, and now it's starting to get a personality. Now it's starting to get a vibe. Right. And I compare it to, like, it's like a collection of short stories. They should somehow hang together. Or dare I say, like an artist, like a fashion designer coming out with his fall collection. There's usually some kind of thematic theme that seems to show up there, even if you're not looking for it, even if you don't notice it, it's subconsciously there. And so you want to find things that fit together, even though, as you mentioned, there's going to be people who don't listen to the album as an album, who are immediately going to just make their own playlists and whatever. And that's fine too. That's fine too. Skip the songs you don't like. If you don't like it, skip it.
Right, exactly. You don't know what's forcing you.
Yeah, hopefully there won't be too many.
It's always the hope, right?
Yeah. But, it should fit together and have continuity, but at the same time not somehow avoid being dull or pretentious.
It's almost like in education science class, where you have like the visible man, where you have the skeleton, then you have the musculature, the veins and the skin and whatnot. And I feel like people are worried about what kind of hat the guy is going to wear when he doesn't have a nervous system in. It's like, come on, what are you doing here? Like it's you put the cart before the horse, people.
The shoes should go with the hat.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's make sure they match. Okay, can we get him some bones first? That might be a good idea. I don't know. Wild concept. I think that there's a lot of love. Well, I know there's a lot of love still for the live show of the Jesus Lizard, and a lot of demand, including from a lot of people and we talked about this previously, that a lot of people never got the chance to see the band. Lucky enough, I think I saw guys like a dozen times back in the day, and then I've seen 2 of the reenactment shows. I think, as great as the other shows were, the best shows have been when you have been back.
Other people have told me that. Other people have said similar things, like, "Wow, I knew you guys would be good. I didn't think you'd be that good," and it's very flattering.
You want to not hear the insult in that compliment, of course.
Right,
but yeah.
Right. That's fine. No, I know what they mean.
Yeah, right.
I'll take it.
Sure.
I was with I went and saw a musician play last night, Ken Vandermark, the lead player from Chicago. He played in Nashville last night. Great show.
Yeah.
And he kind of said the same thing. He saw us play a couple years before, and he thought, and I think, well, part of it, we're older, we're more experienced, we're more comfortable with ourselves. We're not quite as maybe as manic or have quite as much of maybe not quite as much just sheer physical energy as the old days, but we're smarter, and we're not as fucked up as we were. We're not. I mean, we were never junkies. We were never alkies.
Yeah.
But we did our share, and there's times when that gets in the way, and
Right.
And so a lot of people maybe back then didn't notice because they were messed. The audience was probably even more messed
Right there
up.
with you. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Especially when you're playing clubs. That's it. Everyone's blasted.
Oh yeah.
So, I know there were times when those performances, as fun as they were probably compromised because of that.
Yeah.
And now we're older, and I still like to have a drink and maybe have a gummy, have a smoke once in a while. But within reason, within moderation, and I think as a band, we're kind of at that point. But not always David Yao, let's face it. Moderation is never going to be in
It's not his watchword necessarily.
No.
Yeah. But I think that's the way the band is set up works, right? Because I recall so many times. I one show at Bottom the Hill many years ago in San Francisco. He was crowd surfed out during he was performing like one of the songs. He went over to like the merch area and somehow got deposited in the T-shirt box where he did most of the song from the T-shirt box.
Sure. And probably lighting people cigarettes on the way.
A guy handed him a beer while he was there too, and I was like, he needs to get back. It was like it's like this is one of the craziest shows I've ever seen. But again, you guys were just grinding it. You were doing what you do, and the dichotomy of that, I think that the way that it works is so it's exquisite the way it all comes together. And I've seen a lot of bands try to do it, and like something about it usually doesn't work. Yeah. But it seems like, I mean, I hate to use a circus analogy, but it seems like a high wire act sometimes. Sure. And the incongruity between
or a clown show or
like Shannon Sober calls it like the dancing monkey act. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. I can
yes,
get that.
Sure.
That it requires the musicianship and the being tied in, the guitar, bass, and drums all being tied in. Everybody's locked in on that. Have there been times where like stuff's gone like out of control and like you just don't notice?
Like, there might be times here and there where the band, I think we kind of had a general rule, like we focus on what we're doing. We play the arrangement.
Yeah.
And if he comes in or out in the wrong spot, we just keep going. We play the song.
Right.
We're not following him. We're not cueing off of him.
Yeah.
Some bands will cue off the vocals. We never did.
James Brown,
it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
No, we should find him. We should find David Yao every time he makes a mistake. Have the band find the singer. That's
dance over to him and do 10, 20, 30. Yeah.
And so as long as we're concentrating, we just play through it, and we always did. And that's why it works. But like we said, it wouldn't work if we were all as trashed.
Oh no, that's
all over the place as him. It wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And I see bands kind of do that. And if everything was rigid and airtight, even the vocals, I think what appeals to people somewhat is when they see us and they see this band who can obviously play, know what they're doing, all this, and the singer who's in and out of tune, in and out of time, and sometimes way out in the weeds, it kind of makes a mockery of the concept of professionalism, doesn't it? and that's what appeals to some people. And I know it appeals to me in a way too. There's even like those magazines you used to see, Gig magazine, where it's right. And so people who read that, who like, here's what professional bands should do.
Yeah.
Don't say this between songs, and don't put your foot up on the monitor. Don't do this. Don't do that. All these don'ts. And then here we come, drawing bigger crowds than those guys ever will, and everything is wrong.
Right, not doing any of those things.
Not doing any of those things, but hammering away, and everyone's having a great time. So it kind of mocks the whole professionalism thing, but at the same time while being very professional and being, playing very hard and with a lot of dynamics and et cetera, et cetera.
And it's well in the, the dancing monkey element of it is actually an appeal for people that are not like I count your shows amongst ones. This is like way back when, where I would bring people that weren't familiar with the band at all. It's like, come to the show, you will enjoy it.
Yeah.
And they went away being fans. They like bought records. They were like, oh, this is my new favorite band. They're fantastic. And one of the things every one of them cited is, wow, that singer sure is interesting to watch do whatever it is what he's doing. Like basically, like to the point of I have someone that. I'm not sure if he's not someone that goes out to rock shows all the time. And every once in a while, he'd be like, hey, did you hear the Jesus Lizard have a new record? Oh, yeah, I know. I'm well aware. Duane's coming on the show. He's like, oh, that's so good. It's like, and you end up making, you've made music fans over the years just because of the show, where people are coming at it from that. And again, when a lot of bands think they're doing that, and it doesn't quite work. Everyone wants to be Iggy and the Stooges, right? And it's like, are you though? Like maybe that's not for you. Maybe you should do your own thing, perhaps.
Yeah, and maybe you shouldn't try to be them. Maybe people will interpret it as that you might seem like them, but don't try to be like them, and don't try to be like anything. Just be yourselves.
Yes. And
let people interpret it how they want.
No, I think that's so key, and that's something that excellently deployed. Two things I want to get to. I'd like to kind of go, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to go through the songs on Rack and kind of give a little more development. I don't know what you're like for time right now. But.
I can do maybe another 15 minutes.
Okay, cool. So two things real quick. Tomahawk, again, a big Tomahawk fan. We've talked about this in the past.
Thank you.
I think those records are great. I have had the luxury? Sure. I've seen you guys play now and again. Mike Patton, another great frontman, another great singer, wildly different in style, and performance. For the long term, obviously focuses on the Jesus Lizard right now. I feel like there's a lot of Tomahawk material out there. Is there gonna be Tomahawk stuff anytime coming forward? Obviously, it's not the focus now, but some people have never gotten to see that band play, and I think it's a shame.
There might be some shows next year.
Okay. All right. Good.
That's all I can say.
It's anywhere near me, I'll see it.
There might be some shows next year.
Fantastic. Briefly, I want to touch on, as I've mentioned on this show before, I have taken one guitar lesson in my entire life, and it was from you. And it was during the pandemic.
Okay.
And I specifically came to it because I said, hey, I got this thing I do. People, I enjoy it. Other people seem to enjoy it. I can do it for forever, but I want to get out of my comfort zone on stuff, and had a couple few specific things I wanted to kind of put some more tools in the tool belt, if you will.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. I did put those tools in the tool belt, and it shows up on the records. Go me.
Good. Yeah.
But I'm interested. How many people are when you're doing these instructions? How many people are coming in with stuff that's that specific and that focus, and how many are just like, hey, can we play Then Comes Dudley? Like they just want to hear Jesus Lizard songs or whatever.
All right. So let's see. This year, I was actually fairly busy with the lessons in April and May.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started it again just for a month, like July into part of August. But April, May, I was very busy. I think I must have had maybe 15, 20 students at a time, not every week, but, and so, well, typically what I do with people is they usually, if they're coming to me, they want to get out of maybe a rut that they seem to be in. And so they want, I just tell them, look, what I can do is show you some exercises and things that I do, the type of things I practice and work on that not only are physically good for your fingers and that, but actually can kind of maybe jar something loose mentally that sound cool and maybe lend themselves to further development. And so then that's kind of the idea. If you want me to show you Jesus Lizard or Tomahawk riffs, we can do that. I've got them written out. I've got plenty of them, tabbed out for. If you want to do that, I can. And I get some who do, but most don't. I think most people are and sometimes I talk them out of that. I'm like, honestly, the time is better spent on having me show you things that will help you lead you to other things.
Right.
And you don't need to go over this unless you're maybe playing in a band where you're going to cover this song and you want to know the exact fingering. Fine. And anyone really, if there's a part that you could never figure out and you want me to show you, it's fine. But yeah, a lot of it, what I see now is guys who have home studios, and it seems like, and I've talked to people who are in the music retail world, guys who sell instruments, who sell guitars and amps, and guys who work for guitars and amps companies. And yeah, they're selling a lot of guitars and they're selling a lot of recording equipment, but they're not selling that many big amps anymore. So there's when I was a kid, it was all about getting those amps and drums and going out and finding a place that would let you practice, that would let you play, whether it was a youth center or your parents can only stand so much of that racket.
The sort of like, oh, they'll let anything happen there. Oh, great, because this is anything. Like,
yeah, you'd move to different, or you'd move to take turns going to different guys' house until their parents were like, take it somewhere else. Then you'd go to the other guy's house. And we actually worked out a thing. There was a youth center. This is in Plymouth, Michigan. It's a suburb of Detroit, right in between Detroit and Ann Arbor. And in exchange for working there, for exchange for just doing maintenance work and occasionally working security, they would have little concerts. They would let me and my band practice there a couple nights a week and play loud. And I think that, as you know, there's no substitute for plugging into an amp and cranking it. That's a different world. Suddenly, everything changes. Suddenly, everything you did on your acoustic or whatever doesn't quite. The rules have changed as soon as you add volume and wattage to the situation.
Translates differently. Yes.
Yeah, and there's things you learn when you do that, and to have that was such a great thing. So I think there's less of that. I think that based on what these guys tell me and what I see from my lessons is there's more and more people doing home recording, which is fine. It's a different world. It's a different world now, and now they put it up on the internet and things. And now, in the old days, we would walk around and put up flyers, and now, no, you make videos and you spread it around that way. I would like to see a little more motivation for live performances. I don't want to hear people complain about, well, there's nowhere for us to play. There's that circuit is gone. The small. It's like, well, make a new one then.
Yeah. First of all, no, it isn't. Secondly, make your own.
Make your own. That's what CBGB's was started by. What? The guys in television went to this sleazy dive bar and said, hey, we'll build a stage and put in a sound system if you let us play here.
Will you let us do this thing? And they're like, yeah,
let
sure. We got nothing to lose.
People will show up.
Yeah.
And when the punk rock scene was starting, it seemed like all over America, Detroit, New York, Chicago, it was gay bars on weeknights.
Absolutely.
It was church basements. It was, you would rent, or some kid, enterprising guy would rent a hall, a VFW hall, a Elks, whatever, and then they'd book a couple of bands, Misfits or Jodie Foster's Army or whoever's coming through town, and you'd have a big punk jamboree, and maybe you'd make enough money to pay for that and pay the band, the touring band, and everybody else just got sodas and went home.
Yeah,
but you made it happen. You found a way to make it happen, and I think people need to keep doing that.
It's interesting, and this is it's interesting to see people discover DIY, but not from a punk rock headspace. And I'm noticing that a lot. People acting as if they just discovered this new thing, and it's like, oh yeah, there's pretty rich tradition of this that goes back multiple decades, right?
I mentioned I saw Ken Vandermark play last night in East Nashville, a place called Rice Vice, a sake bar.
Nice. Where
the guy at the door was you would pay by Venmo, and in this hall, not even a sound system, and people just setting up on the floor and playing in a sort of industrial park area in a sake bar. And I was like, this is great. This is great. I expect Toulouse-Lautrec to walk in and play piano any minute now.
Sure, yeah. Who knows? Like, we'll see if the night takes us. No, I love that. And I also love that you do the guitar lessons, because one of the nice things about this, the way that the world is now, is that you can have a musician of your caliber or Joe Lawley or something, and you can learn from these people, and however which way you want to deploy that. And I think that's a good use of all of this communication and collaboration.
Oh,
tools.
yeah, I couldn't have done this 30 years ago. I used to give lessons out of my apartment or at a music store. If I was doing that in Nashville, trying to give guitar lessons, there's so many guitar players here, and everybody knows somebody who's a guitar player. I wouldn't have a chance. But with the internet, it's international.
Yeah, no, it's a good progression, right? I want to be mindful of your time, but I love this record, and I want people to get some ideas for the context of it. We won't make this too long. This is sort of just people get context and engage with the music differently sometimes.
Sure.
It could be like where the song came from, who started it, arrangement, et cetera, et cetera. You know the drill. But let's go through a rack. So Hide and Seek is the first one. Obviously, there's a great video for it. That's that's a notable one. But tell me about Hide and Seek.
Hide and Seek, very up tempo. I think I'm playing in drop D tuning for guitar geeks out there. It's got a cool guitar break. Almost sounds like a siren. Yeah. A very upbeat, almost. In retrospect, it was almost, this one does sound kind of stoogey to me, almost.
I can hear it.
Not unlike Shake Appeal in the groove.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
without trying to be. It was like oh, this kind of, anyway, but musically quite different. Yeah, so that one worked out. Armistice Day.
And just real quick, putting that one first, I mean, I think that's a level set, right? That's here's strap in, folks. Here we go.
And the Paul Allen, the producer, insisted on that. He insisted on making that first. That's going to be the first single.
Yeah.
He insisted on that song. Actually has a longer intro than what we typically have. Like it chugs along before the vocals show up. That was him.
Fantastic. Good on him. Armistice Day is the next one up.
Armistice Day is another slow one. This also seems kind of stoogey to me without dirt. But without trying to be. A slow, almost a bluesy thing, a long, slow 5-minute song about an old woman's funeral. But this one also has a guitar solo that I thought that I was quite proud of. And without it being a lot of notes, without it being, falling into the internet shredder world.
Yeah.
And I think David's vocals are very, very emotive on this.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. Grind. Tell me about Grind.
Grind is a pretty straightforward stomping rock song. And a two-parter. Got another guitar break and then a kind of a breakdown in the middle. Pretty straightforward. This one almost had a 70s vibe to me.
I was gonna say Led Zeppelin. Like not in
right.
The good Led Zeppelin. I should clarify that.
Right.
There's some pretty bad Led Zeppelin.
I'll take it.
No, it has that. It has that sort of feel. Like it sounds very much Jesus Lizard, but has that like 70s vibe to it to a certain degree as well. What If?
What If is a change of pace. Slow.
Breaker.
Very atmospheric. You've got this weird spoken word story based on something that actually happened to me. It was based on a what if. Years ago, there was I was in a bar in Michigan, and I saw an old friend I hadn't seen in years, and he was with his wife and his wife's sister, his sister-in-law. And he pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, my sister-in-law is recently widowed, and this is her first time out in a while. And man, if you would ask her to dance or something, man, it would really help a lot. And just kind of, this is her first time out in a while."
Yeah.
And I went, I'll try. And I didn't know her at all. I didn't know his wife either. So anyway, I sat down and we tried to talk, and it was very awkward situation. And I don't think we even ever did actually get the dance or something. I think we had a drink and hung out, and it just seemed like it wasn't happening. And I thought about it later. I thought, what if it had happened? What if it turned out she was like, what if she had pulled me aside and go, "Let's get out of here. This place is boring." What if it turned out she was a psycho and her husband had died because she fucking killed him?
She killed him.
And she has this whole other life, this insane life, this whole criminal life that no one knows about.
Yeah.
and what if. So that's where that was coming from.
Fantastic. This is the content that I crave. I love that. Lord Godiva.
Lord Godiva is almost like the whole song is like a bass solo. It not only has a bass solo, it is a bass solo, but it's a very driving, and it has a very driving riff. That was actually from the 90s, something that toward the late 90s that we had started and never finished and never used. The Lord Godiva was just funny. I don't think it has anything to do with the lyrics. We thought David Yao was Lord Godiva.
Sure, yeah.
But, yeah, that's it. Hang on just a second.
All right, no problem. Going through the songs of the Jesus Lizard Rack, which is out September 13th.
Okay. Sorry, checking on my cat.
Okay, all good.
All right.
Alexis Feels Sick is the next one.
Feels Sick. Yeah. This was kind of, it's to me, it references some of our earlier stuff in a way, just that slow pull, some of the guitar sound and approach in some of it. And then it's got some odd meter stuff mixed with 4/4, straight, fairly slow but creepy. It just kind of, it's just, I think, a classic Jesus Lizard thing. It kind of ticks off a lot of boxes in that. And I think David's vocals and lyrics and things were very interesting on this. To me, I always thought it was Alexa Feels Sick. And I thought it was a commentary on,
the
AI
digital assistants.
Bot world where Alexa is feeling sick today and isn't going to help you.
That's great. That's great. And of course, the Alexis in question is from Girls Against Boys. Alexis, right? Yeah, it was.
But I think Alexa is better.
Alexa Feels Sick. That could be the sequel.
Yeah.
Falling Down.
Falling Down, a straight ahead driving kind of punk rock grinder. Yeah. And then it also has kind of a weird break in the middle and then picks up again. This one also, come to think of it, we had demoed in a different version in the late 90s and then never used it. So this and Godiva actually were remnants of things that we had sort of, that we broke up the first time before we actually finished these or actually used it for anything.
Sure.
So this one actually came back and has a beefier chorus. There's a video coming out for this that I mentioned that's going to be by Bill Barminski that's going to make your eyes pop out.
Fantastic. I can't wait. Can't wait to pop my eyes out for it. Dunning-Kruger, one of my favorite terms, by the way.
Yeah, and that has to do with the thing where people don't know how wrong they are and that whole world. This was a pretty straightforward, grinding punk rock kind of song. It's funny, there's a guitar solo thing in the middle that it's kind of a party. Like you can hear the vocals, there's lots of off mic vocal things and things kind of slightly run off the rails. I always liked that. It seems like when I was a kid, certain songs, it seems like usually Beach Boys songs, maybe even Sex Pistols songs, where there would be a guitar break in the middle. I would hesitate even to call it a solo, but it's almost like they left the mics on, and so you can hear all this off mic nonsense going on.
Right.
And it just, to me, it just added to the atmosphere and added to the levity, like you're crashing a party or something, or it's a live show and there's, mayhem ensuing.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of what I hoped to think was happening on that.
Yeah, there is a kind of a rich tradition of that. I love that stuff too. I wonder if there's a term for that. Probably, it's probably German, if there is. Moto R. Yeah, it's not Motorhead, but it's not Radiohead. Right.
And this one was another grinder. But there's a video for that too. If you haven't seen it, that has a lot of drone footage in it. This one was a real sleeper for me, but I really like it. And David, his lyrics in this one were very offhand, but they really worked. And I think it's one of his best performances. Kind of cuts loose and just lets it fly. And then there's a cool, I like the guitar part that I came up with, that break in the middle, where that descending line working over the thing, and then it goes up an octave in the same descending line.
I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff. It's well deployed. Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty proud of that. Well, I am proud of that.
Continue. You can continue to be proud of it.
Yeah.
Yes. Is that your hand?
Is that your hand? This one, it's got a weird sort of, I don't know how to describe the rhythm to it. It's almost got a weird bounce to it. This one had a slight political overtone, but without necessarily being obvious and pointing fingers at anyone in particular, which I think is cool. The title has nothing to do with the song, nothing to do with the lyrics. But this one also has kind of there's a break in the middle, and the bass and drums cut one way, and the guitar does these weird sort of low arpeggios that kind of slightly a blurred kind of effect on it. Not unlike Geordie Walker from Killing Joke.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I threw a little close, like Alexis Feels Sick. There was a thing I threw in a little piece of John McGough from Night Shift from Susie and the Banshees. There's a couple seconds of that referenced. And this one, Is That Your Hand? There's a little touch of Geordie Walker there.
I can hear it. Like,
right?
It's definitely, it's not like a ripoff or anything. Don't get me wrong.
No,
it's definitely coming from that world. Yeah.
But if anything, it's a tribute. And for both of those guys,
exactly.
it's a tribute to them, which I think is very timely now.
I've recently kind of, for obvious reasons, but unfortunate ones, kind of gone back to the Killing Joke stuff and be like, God damn, what an interesting, like, just what an interesting player, you know, and same thing. All that great guitar stuff and that Susie stuff is just freaking awesome. You know, it's good stuff. Swan the Dog closes out the record. Tell me about that one.
Dog. This was a fairly complex arrangement. It's got a lot of different parts, more so than most of these other songs, and some of which only show up once. And it also has a bit of acoustic sort of hybrid thing. It's weird. It's one of those that it sounds different to me every time I listen to it. And I'll listen to it one day and I think, oh, that was cool. I want to think Roxy Music in a way, and then I'll listen to it another time and like, Roxy Music, if they were trying to be ZZ Top or, you know.
Right, yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
I do, yeah.
So I don't know. It's funny. I had that sort of almost Neapolitan sounding strummy guitar break that starts. It's the intro, and then later shows up as the middle break, almost Neapolitan, almost like a mandolin part.
Yeah.
And I got done with it, and I realized it was the same key and almost the same notes, but with slightly different approach as Monkey Trick, the break in that. I keep doing the same thing decades later.
Yeah, well, at least it's deployed differently. So, you know.
Yeah, if I hadn't said that, I don't think
anyone would have noticed.
No one would have said that. But,
no chance. Yeah.
Once you say that, you can't unhear that.
You can't unring the bell, my friend. That's very true. Fantastic. So that's Rack. It's a hell of a record. You guys are going to be very busy as a band. I think I'm going to see you in Cincinnati. I actually worked out that I'm going to be able to see that with the fantastic Lung, who I dearly adore.
Yeah, looking forward.
You got a lot. You have, and I guess it's the nature of the world, right? That stuff plans out further. But you're booked down to 2025, my friend. Like there's like all kinds of stuff happening.
It starts off slow. It starts off slow, very sporadic, starting in September, and then it picks up toward the end of the year, January in the UK. Then there's a gap. But I think there might be some Tomahawk in there. And then it picks up again in the spring and summer. So, I'm going to be busy for the next couple years, I think.
Well, I am overjoyed for the opportunity to see you play again. It's been a long time.
Well, thank you.
I think you've made a great work here. I'm not just saying that. I have a lot of bands on, talk about a lot of records.
You're out there. You're doing it.
It's really great, and if for some reason people aren't aware of it, go get it right now is what I would say. And of course, go see Jesus Lizard on tour. Duane, I want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time as always. And you've been on the show before. It's the only canned question I ever ask. Why do you do what you do?
Oh, God. Because nothing else is quite like it, because nothing else, no other art form to me is as interesting or as exciting or as affecting as music, and live music in particular. And so being in a position, I feel so fortunate that I can do this. I can get together with a band and record new material. And there's people out there who want to hear it, and people who are willing to spend money to come and see us play is a mind-boggling thing that I will never take for granted and will always appreciate. And therefore, I practice and work hard and get in shape so I can deliver the goods, and hopefully everyone will go home happy, us included.
Duane Denison, thank you so much, man. I'll see you next month.
I hope so.
Take care, brother.
Cool.
Deeply appreciate you.
Bye.
There he goes. Mr. Duane Denison. I'm going to throw up these tour dates, put them in the show notes as well, so everyone can go get an eyeful. An eyeful? Sure, a couple eyes full of Jesus Lizard and some earfuls as well. Let's hear Alexis Feels Sick off of Wreck. Lexus feels sick. Jesus, Lizard. That's off a rack. That's off of rack. That's funny. The brand new record by the Jesus Lizard, highly recommended. Depending on when you're listening to this, may or may not already be out. If it's not out, you can definitely pre-order it, and it won't be that much longer. That was Duane Denison. Love that dude. One of my favorite guitar players. I'm glad I'm not going to completely miss them on this tour. So that's good for me. Lung's playing that show too, so that's exciting. Hey, the name of this show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you so very much for listening to it. This show airs normally Thursdays, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Thursdays, streaming live YouTube and Twitch. Podcasted again later everywhere. Anywhere you get your podcasts. Always free, no ads, no sponsors, no kidding. ProtonicReversal.com for that. If you like the show and you want to support it, though, it's a very long-running show. $1 a month at patreon.com/ProtonicReversal achieves that goal, helps keep the lights on, and that is always deeply appreciated. Thanks to everybody for liking the shows, subscribing to their platform of choice, sharing it around.
Signing off.
That's how people discover it.
And Mrs. America, all the ships at sea.
Beats back the almighty algorithmic overlords, too, which I thank you for. And yeah, just thank you for listening. Appreciate it, as always. Anything else? Let's see. Bob Burt, Sonic Youth, Pussy Galore,
50,000.
John Spencer and the Hitmakers, Chrome Cranks coming back on for a full episode next week. Can't wait for that. It's going to be great. And then episode 400. I wonder what that's going to be. Anything else? Let's see. No, I think that's it. Stay safe out there.
Microphone turns sound into electricity.
And of course, check you later.
Can you hear me now? Out on Route 128, dark and lonely. I got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on Earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Is it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency, hey, hey!